Climbers, your record is mixed and mastered. Congratulations. You've completed 5% of the project checklist. 95% is marketing. But what's the most effective marketing strategy? Is it radio, PR, playlisting? Today we're going to unpack an amazing Bob Lefsett's blog that answers these questions, and we're going to throw some practical, effective solutions at you as well. Welcome to the C.L.I.M.B! This is a show dedicated to helping singers, songwriters, and indie artists like you create leverage in the music business. That is the name of the game. That is the currency you're trading. It's not talent. You don't trade in talent. You think you do, but you don't. What you need to trade in is leverage. And that means you've got some successes behind you. You prove that, number one, you can do the job well. Number two, that you want to do it. There's a difference between somebody who can write really good songs and record really good songs and somebody who's an artist. Yep. And it's what's going to move the needle. When you have the leverage, the labels, the management, the booking agents, everybody you want to work with is going to come out of the woodwork and line up nicely for you. And that's the way that you want to handle it. That's why we called it C.L.I.M.B, creating leverage in the music business. See what we did there is a setup. It was and that's a backstream from my good friend and co-host, Mr. Brent Baxter, who's an award-winning hit songwriter with cuts by Alan Jackson, Randy Travis, Lady A, Joe Nichols, and more. He's had a slew of top 10 / number one hits in Southern gospel, Australian radio. Man's making miracles happen. And what I love about him is he helps songwriters like you turn pro by revealing how you write like a pro, do business like a pro, and then on the regular, he gets you connected with the pros. And this is real. This is relationships are created out of this. If you're truly ready, then and you play the game right, you're going to get some relationships. There's single song contracts that have happened. There are publishing relationships that have happened, co-writes that have happened, all kinds of beautiful forward progress. And you can find Brent very easily at songwritingpro.com.
And I would like to introduce you to my co-host, Johnny Dwinell. Johnny owns Daredevil Production. They're breaking artists digitally by identifying new fans through data. Yeah, it's complicated, but thankfully Johnny knows what all the 25-cent words mean. If you're an artist looking to increase your streams, blow up your video views, sell more live show tickets, and get discovered by new fans, TV, and music industry pros, Daredevil Production can help. Daredevil has worked with multi-platinum artists like Colin Ray, Tracy Lawrence, Ty Herndon, and Andy Griggs, just to name a few. You can find Johnny at daredevilproduction.com. That's production singular, no S, and there's no S because there is no other Johnny D.
Okay, so I think you need to back off on your mic a little bit. You look a little hot.
Am I a little loud?
You don't sound like you're distorting, but the signal looks really hot. So maybe just take I don't want you to lose the energy. Just maybe dial the mic pre down or something.
And I'll just back that sucker up a little bit. Want me to go ahead and go over?
No, that's right. I think it doesn't sound like it was distorted, but when I just see it big with your files, it makes me concerned.
Okay, so we're going to take all that stuff out.
Yeah. So, hey, man, what's happening?
Man, just living life. Life is crazy. Life is an adventure, which we'll get into offline, but it is good. It is good. Hey, I have a release out today, which by the time that this drops will be a couple, 2 weeks back, but the Foresters, which is a Southern gospel group, they put out a praise record, a worship album. And so a song of mine called God Amazing is on that one. I wrote with Jay Spate and Brian Hitt. It's also been recorded by Charles Billingsley. So it's been out there. It's from my old Peer Music and RPM Music deals. So it's nice to see some old songs getting some new life, and hopefully that'll do well. And
nice.
Yeehaw.
Congratulations, brother. I love that.
Thank you. It's always fun to have a release out there. Found out about another Southern gospel thing, got a license. Didn't know this group, didn't know it was pitched. But I'm like, okay, well, I will hook you up with Blue Water.
Hey,
so that's fun.
Thank you for helping Mackenzie with her licensing stuff too, and kind of pointing them in the right direction.
I am happy to help them pay me. Very happy to help them pay me. I'm such a giver. Such a giver.
You agenda and having son of a bitch.
Hey, everybody wins. Everybody wins.
I am.
I don't encourage them to be lawbreakers. They license it. They're doing it correctly, and then everybody's happy.
That's right. It's not my bag. I mean, God, put me in a licensing department and just give me a gun and a bullet. Like I just
Man, I used to work in that.
in my head. Fuck
I
this.
used to work in that for a hot minute at Blue Water before they worked for me. I worked for them.
Yeah.
And oh man, I think we might have talked about that a little bit on the podcast we just did with Randy Barber. But
Yeah.
yeah, that is I know just enough to know I don't ever want to be in charge of that for myself or anyone else. Like even though
Uh-uh.
I got paid to do that for a hot minute, it was whoo, boy, that's a lot of stuff. And I'm like, just let me rhyme. Let me just
Yeah.
do that. That's more my
I
sweet
don't.
spot.
I can't. Like, if you want to just, my personal version of hell
Mhm.
is welcome to hell, Johnny. Sit down here. We've got like 55,000 years of contracts we want you to look over and pay
Yeah.
attention to details. I'm like, no, no.
No. Right. Or, I mean, just imagine this, if you're in the admin department of a publishing company that has a lot of writers, you gotta get them to turn their stuff in
Yeah.
with, like, co-writers and maybe co-writer information, dates of creation. Yeah. Good luck with that.
Speaking of that, okay, I'm not going to reveal anything right now, but we are getting very close. Ray Hamilton and I are getting very close to
Hmm.
launching this new software tool that everybody is going to cream over. Like, I mean, everybody, right? We've already reached out to a couple music supervisor friends and publisher friends, and
Mhm.
we've offered them like lifetime membership to the software tool for beta testing.
Yeah.
And when I explain what it is, they're like, "Oh, yes, I would, I would, so like you get
Yeah.
lifetime membership for trying it out, but also we want a testimony, a video testimony from you explaining like, why this tool is so exciting to you for what you do. And that's for songwriters, for publishers, for music supervisors. It's wild. And I can't wait to share it with everybody.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. I've talked to Ray about it, and it is exciting.
yeah, it's cool. And what's I mean, what I we might have even touched on it before in the podcast, but finally we're getting to the point where we're reaching out to people and we're saying, hey, we've got this tool. We wondered if you'd be willing to try it out. And
Mhm.
in return, we'll give you, the lifetime membership, and we want a testimony if you like it. But here's what it does. And people are like, and I'll ask them a couple questions. So, like, has this happened to you or this happened to you? And they're like, yeah, like every day. You know,
Yeah.
I'm forced to do this and this because this tool doesn't exist. So it's really, I'm pretty stoked about it, man. Like I can't wait to.
Awesome.
We're getting close. We're getting close. So, hey, today we are going to get into another Bob Lefsetz blog that I had read and actually saved on my phone forever and forgot about it. It came out, I think, in November of 2022. But and then I'm like cleaning off crap on my phone. I'm like, holy crap, why didn't I touch on this? So, if you don't know who Bob Lefsetz is, he is a like probably maybe the number one music industry blog
Mhm.
for artists. It's very inside. It's not this isn't a consumer blog. This is like an inside the industry blog. And so artists, producers, engineers, all the label execs, they all get this blog, and he's really, really, really good in music analysis. And I just
Mhm.
think what he said, there's so many lessons in this one blog that he wrote. We're going to read through it and kind of unpack it, okay? And it's all
Cool.
about your core audience and how important that is now. And also, I mean, not for nothing, when I read it, of course, it is very validating and reflective of everything we constantly preach in this podcast. So I'm like, there you go. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Left set
Yeah.
says yes too. But before we do that, let's take care of a little business. Join the Climb community on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/groups/, the Climb community, or you can just search for that. And you have to ask to be let in. We let everybody in. I say that, by the way. And there's one guy I haven't let in for like a month now because I think it's a bot. I think because it's like this. It's an older guy. He's not very much older, but he's not a kid. And
Yeah.
it's his Facebook account's been open for 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
it's like a sketch. I don't know. I don't
Like,
know.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I got to reach out to him and just message him and find out if he's for real or not. Because sometimes you can't see all their posts, like depending on how they set up their stuff. It's
Right.
hard for me to tell. I don't want to keep them out, but I don't want to let any bots in either.
Yeah, we don't like the bots.
We're protective of it. We're protective of it. But anyway, just be good boys and girls. The feed is for everybody, so don't put stuff about you or your company or anything like that. But stuff that's universal, man. It can be funny, it can be educational. I will post crazy music things that I find, just put it in there
Mhm.
for people to be like, wow, it's cool. Definitely articles that I find. Did you see by the way, the latest Taylor
On
Swift?
Taylor Swift?
Yeah,
I
Music
saw that I saw
Worldwide,
the headline that her re-records are just slaying it, and I meant
crushing.
to tag you when I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, Johnny will be happy
No,
about this."
I was all over it. I read it, and it's really. I think we might do maybe another episode on that. Maybe not. I'm not sure if it's worthy of it, but it's like what's fascinating is like right now both sides are winning. Okay,
Hmm,
so year over year, the 6 records that are now those masters that are now owned by Shamrock Capital, which is like basically a hedge fund that bought it off of Scooter Braun, right?
mhm.
And made him $45 million, by the way. And he turned that over about a year. That dude is smart. That's a good payday.
Yeah, that's not bad.
But so she's prior to today, she's released 2 of her 6 records that those masters were bought and sold on, and they've done a significant dent in like year over year. So 2022 was the first like full calendar year that both records were out. The
Mhm,
first 3 records she did, which I think was Fearless, and then one was Red, and
mhm.
so the first full calendar year that they're out, so then you can judge like a full calendar year of traffic on one versus the other. She's crushing, right? Like her I think it's on the Red album, the original master traffic is down like 41%,
Oh, wow.
from last year, and the original master traffic on uh Speak Now, or not Speak Now, on
Fearless
Fearless
or Red? Yeah.
are is down like 17% right now.
Mm,
So as a whole, the original master tracks, the traffic on that grew,
mm.
but here's the thing. It's like just so you guys, I want you to know this information so you can interpret the headlines when you read the stuff and you know what you're looking at. But uh, the last year's traffic for all of Taylor Swift's original master traffic, 30% of that traffic was from one record from 1989.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not sure what the gross cumulative is, but the 2 most popular are 1989 and Reputation, that get, I'm guessing, like 50 to 60% of all the Taylor Swift traffic.
Mhm.
So she's done this incredible dent, but she hasn't re-record, and she's releasing Speak Now today. Today's July 7th. This will drop later. But so as a whole, her master traffic for Shamrock Capital has grown, and they should be very happy. But she hasn't gotten. She's releasing the 3rd record now, but still not the ones that can just really be devastating. So it'll be interesting
Yeah,
to see what she does with Reputation and 1989, which also are, by the way, her pop records.
yeah,
And somebody else pointed out to me yesterday, I can't remember who it was, probably a little easier to re-record those, because it's synth
yeah.
and not like guitar sounds, and not that sort of
Mhm.
stuff she was doing before. So that's interesting. But anyway, we got any wins? Let's talk about wins. Sorry, we're dragging this out.
Yeah, so every Wednesday, we have the New Heights Post, is where we encourage you to share your wins, your music-related wins with us so that we can celebrate with you. So we're just gonna share a few of these because we don't have time for all of them because there's just too much winning. All right, Bill O'Hanlon, with who we got to hang out with the other night in Nashville. It's good to see Bill.
Man,
He
it was good to
said,
see you.
"Yeah, it was
And
good.
all the climbers, like we were holding court in the.
It was fun. It was great."
It was super
And
fun.
yep. So, speaking of which, I told Bill, it was co-writer Greg Wilson, I think, played this song that they wrote called "Wake Up Call," which is just powerful.
Yes.
And at the end of it, I looked at Bill. I'm like, dude, you're gonna make me foster like a child. And sure enough, we are. So
Yeah.
anyway, thanks, Bill. Thanks, Bill.
Send him,
Johnny,
Bill.
you didn't get me out of there
Bill
fast enough.
a bill. Bill Scott. Now I got that song from him. I'm gonna send it to Josh. That's
It's a good
that's
song, man.
a good freaking song. Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, Bill said, wrote with 4 up and coming artists this past week, and several of them are going to use a song we wrote in their next project. So good job, Bill. Plus, got to hang out with Johnny Brent at the local. Yes, you did. That's a win for us
Oh,
too.
he said that? Right on.
Oh, which is sweet. Isn't that nice?
I love it.
And Kathy Wallace, who we also got to hang out with at the
Yes.
locals, that spent 3 days at a songwriting retreat and loved every minute. Great songs were born. I think that retreat was right after we hung out with her. She
Yeah.
was
She was on
in
her way the
town for
next
that.
day, I believe.
Yes.
Way to
Tracy
go,
Richardson.
Kathy. So good to hang with you.
Yes, it was so good. And Tracy Richardson, who we also got to hang out with,
Mhm.
says, great trip to Nashville. Played 3 rounds on my Nashville tour. Got to hang out with Kathy Wallace, Elizabeth Eckert, Brent and Johnny at the local. Lots of music and connections packed into a few days. So, man, that's just a few of them. So that was fun. It was so great to see so many climbers out and about and listen to music and chat about
There's a bunch of
stuff.
birds came out, dude. Like I have a bromance with that dude. Like
With
I love
Dustin Bird,
Dustin Bird,
yeah.
dude. He is like right from the mothership.
Yeah, you guys are gonna get along great. So
Yeah,
Dustin
he's
Bird is
got
a
a mischievous streak in him that I'm just like, come on, right over here. You're in this crowd.
oh, yes. Yeah, yeah, you're gonna get along fine. So Dustin's an artist on Open Road Recordings in Canada. He just moved down to Nashville. He's cut stuff of mine. We're co-writers, and so I was like, "You need to come out to the local. You need to meet Johnny."
And he's a friend of the
And
pod. He's been on the podcast.
he's been on the podcast on a song title challenge, I believe, and yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. And
So
maybe a
good
radio
times.
content challenge.
Maybe so. Maybe
I
so. I
can't
think
remember if that's true or not. But anyway, all right. Well, let's get into this, you guys.
yes, let's do it.
But once again, credit where credit is due. This is from Bob Lefsetz, Lefsetz. And if you go to lefsetz.com, you can see the blog there. He also has like an incredible podcast that we've often used for content on this show, and I've learned so much from that podcast. I mean, these are the big wigs in the industry, and you just learn how stuff really happened. And Bob does really good interviews, I think. So that's good. So let's go. I'm just going to read through this blog, and we're kind of going to break it down section by section, but um, this is the gospel in terms of really getting ahead as an artist. Okay,
Mhm,
it's all he says. It's titled "The Core." And he says it's all about your core. I know you've heard this a zillion times. All the stuff about 1,000 true fans, or we call them super fans, right? And
mhm,
that's not what I'm talking about here. He says, sure, first and foremost, you need a fan base, but once you have one, ignore the external. It's a waste of time.
hmm,
I know you're sitting at home wondering how you can be bigger, how your act can break. Maybe you hire a big PR agent. Maybe you spam writers. Maybe you hire an independent radio promo person. The key is to spread the word. No. I'm not saying radio airplay is worthless, but how many people are still listening to terrestrial radio? Only the most passive and laid back, not the people who work at the station. They're still passionate, but the old days of the active radio listener are history. So, I mean, gosh, you guys, let's unpack that for a second, because
mhm,
I was talking with my staff today, and we were just sort of discussing like industry perspectives, and I'm like, when I'm talking to like bigger industry people, I have to be careful what I say and how I serve it up, because I want to echo what Bob Lefsetz is saying on here. Like, I don't think that radio airplay is worthless by any stretch, but I don't think it is the launching pad. I know that it's not the launching pad that it used to be, and so therefore, when you bring in radio matters, right? So
mhm,
it's very worth it to some artists, and it's worthless to new artists trying to break through on it, even if you're on a record label. It just shortens your runway because it's so expensive.
mhm,
And
yep,
I had, because I was curious about this through another one of my corporate clients here, who's thinking about considering very seriously doing some talk radio promotion for his business. And he was asking me, because I had a radio show in the mortgage industry, just bouncing ideas off of me and asked me what I thought. And so, doing some research for my answers, I had one of my staff people just kind of we actually AI'd all these articles on radio consumption, and it's
mhm,
funny. Here's what I discovered: all the articles on radio consumption, it's like reading any kind of political spin from either side of the aisle. Doesn't matter where your politics land, but
yeah,
whether, like you can tell spin, right?
yeah,
And this is all this stuff is like written by people who have a dog in the fight when it comes
mhm,
to radio, and so they're like, headlines are like, radio's still the dominant, um, the dominant way to uh, deliver content on the planet Earth.
mhm,
It's like, okay, yeah, that's true. I actually believe that. But we had a hardest time finding how much it's declined in the last
Yeah.
10 years. Nobody
Mhm.
wants to say that, but the radio stations are going under. I mean, CBS has sold, who started in radio, so the CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting um, station. I mean, they sold off all their radio assets in 2016 because they're not making money,
Yeah.
and that's because the audiences are down. So it's like, you have to be careful who you're talking to when you're getting information on radio. But I,
Mhm.
I do think radio's it's still really, really good for some artists. But Brand, you always said it best. It's a second stage rocket.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the passive radio listener or the active radio listener is history, and therefore, because there's just not enough people in each radio market listening to terrestrial radio, it is not delivering the market penetration that it used to, and therefore,
Mhm.
number one isn't what it used to be worth. So it changes everything, right? So Bob
Mhm.
goes on to say, and playlisting. He said that doesn't work either. Even if you get on the playlist, unless someone saves the track, Spotify doesn't boost you; it drops you, and people skip instead of getting frustrated. Adjust your perspective. We mentioned this on playlisting for us. We do playlist promotion is a strategic tool that we use if the budget is big enough. But I always inform my artists, like, it's like, okay, raise your right hand, and their teams. It's like, understand this. Spotify's distribution. Spotify is not marketing. So
Mhm.
Spotify is where somebody's going to go to consume what you make. It's not why they're going there. That's going to be the marketing. And so, getting on a playlist helps get certain things in the pump primed for Spotify to get your popularity score up, and certainly to provide a sense of accomplishment for the core audience that you do have. But it is, it is, it's not, you're not going to break from exposure on Spotify or on a playlist, but you can make
Mhm.
money if you're on the right one.
Yeah.
And there's a difference, and that feels weird to separate the two, right? Because usually when you break, you make money, but here you can
Right.
make money and not break. Isn't that strange, right?
Hmm.
So he goes on to say, just satiate the core, meaning your
Mhm.
core audience, and the core always wants more. Stay in contact, deliver on a regular basis, and know who these people are. Right? So stay in contact means like you're always putting up content, and deliver on a regular basis. Be consistent about your content, and then know who these people are. So we are putting some of the final touches together on the very first. This is an experiment that I'm doing, Brent. You've heard me talk about it before. Let's just call it
Yeah.
like a super fan or core audience incubator,
Mhm.
where on through digital ads, I can identify who's actually been consuming and liking the content for my artists.
Mhm.
So, and I know if they like it a little or if they like it a lot. So I'm not talking about people that leave a comment or that react positively to something, because that stuff can be done by bots, or even people who comment, because that can
Mhm.
also be done by a bot. But if they save it, if they share it, or if they're watching it 100% of the way through, we can be pretty sure that they're interested, right?
Yeah.
And that they
Mhm.
enjoyed it. So, uh, knowing that we can target those specific people. So, one, we've identified who is most likely to become a core audience for an
Right.
artist, right? Because they're so actively trying to save it, share it, and watch it. And then knowing that I can target those people specifically, those specific accounts, with a message from an artist. Let's say, hey, this is Josh Roy. Man, I just this is for you. I just wanted to give you a gift, because I know that you either shared some of my content, saved some of my content, or watched it almost all the way through. And so if you click this link here, it's just a free download of a special track. Nobody else will have this track unless they've saved some of my content, shared some of my content, or watched it almost all the way through. That's the requirement. And
Mhm.
but you're the only, that's the only place you can get it, is this way. And oh, hey, by the way, When you go to download it, it's absolutely free, no big deal. Just tell us where to send it, which means I get the email address.
Email, right?
But by the way, if you want to, I will have on the thank you page after they download the track, I will have a pop up that has a button to invite them to a private Facebook group
Hmm.
where I have to, negotiate with my artists because they find this difficult and I think a little weird and foreign. But I want you to spend 1 hour a week on Facebook Live and play some songs, take some requests, talk to these people. You know what I came up with yesterday, Brent, was
What was that?
we had Josh a while back do some interview content where I've talked about the artist branding questionnaire
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
before, and what we've done is I was telling Josh, I'm like, dude, like you should when you do the live thing with these people, you should bring out that questionnaire and ask some of those people those questions.
Hmm.
Right? We've got his reactions and his answers to a bunch of these, like over 200 questions on there, but they're essentially getting to know you questions that can be revealing or interesting, provocative,
Mm-hmm.
and also I think entertaining. But man, if you just have a list of questions that you can just choose from as an artist when you're doing like one of these live private group things, how great would that? They'd be like you're asking questions about them, you
Yeah.
know. And when it's as small, like maybe, and Josh had already been doing this to his credit, and so we're kind of reviving it. But uh, the, we already had, I think, like I don't know, there's got to be like 75 people in that group already now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a small group; it's not getting too big. But if you start asking them questions and you ask them by name when you're on a live thing, how cool is that? I
Yeah.
just think that's getting to that's nailing right what Lefts is to saying here. Do be in contact on a regular basis and know who they are. And once you get that core group set up, the core group is what's necessary to break in some
Mm-hmm.
whatever that means to you. Okay, but I mean to me, it just means that the artist is profitable,
Yeah.
and then there's different degrees of breaking. Right, there's Taylor Swift all the way down to um, to Josh Roy, who makes a living touring right now, but he's
Mm-hmm.
not driving Ferraris, right?
Right.
But he's on his way. So, um, Lefsit says it's all about the data today, but the record labels are far behind. I'd fire most of the people there and hire data scientists. I'm thinking about stealing that name right there, data scientist. I like that.
Yeah.
I did it to find out exactly who is listening to the music, who is a fan, and then I would reach these people and incentivize them, get them to meet the act, send them swag.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when you can identify, like through digital ads, through even if you're not doing digital promotion, if you have, when you look at your comments, when you look at your reactions on the stuff you post organically, there's usual suspects
Yeah.
in
There
there.
are.
These are your core people, and
I mean, we find the same thing in the climb community. The
yeah,
people that are listening, the wins, people that are commenting, it's a lot of the
hmm
same names, which is awesome, and we love seeing those names, and we feel like we know them more than we know. There are hundreds of people in that group. I can name a handful because they're the
yeah.
ones that interact.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And you know what? I mean, what a great way to make it feel for the artist who is a little uncomfortable with that because it feels a little foreign or they feel
Mhm.
maybe it's sort of self-aggrandizing or
Mhm.
it's pompous to like why would these people want to come to a private group and listen to what I have to say?
Right,
How
yeah.
about downloading that brand questionnaire and asking them?
Mhm.
Because I promise you, like, and this is like the Brent, you and I have met Garth Brooks a couple times,
Yep.
and that is the one thing everybody always says about Garth Brooks. It's like, oh my God, he just wanted to talk about me the whole time.
Yeah.
It's friggin' genius.
Mhm.
And they walk away feeling so inflated
Yeah.
and so happy that wow, he was like interested in me. And you know what? I think maybe it's because he's a little uncomfortable answering all those questions with somebody he doesn't know.
It might be that. It might be like, I know me, and I'm sick of talking about me.
And that
I
too,
wanna
I'm
know
sure.
about you, right? And so it's a humble kinda way, but it's also smart because most people's favorite subject is themselves, and so it's kinda like, the thing in the concert where, um, Garth or somebody else will take the camera from the person in the front row and take their picture.
Yeah, yep,
Not even a selfie, but like Garth took
yeah,
this picture of me from the stage. I mean, it's that thing of making them feel special, and they're going to feel more special. They're like, he asked about me. Like when I met him, yeah, he was like, we talked
yes.
about Arkansas and driving through Arkansas because he'd drive through Arkansas on the way to Oklahoma and different stuff. And yeah, always really nice. And of course, every time we talk about meeting Garth, I think of our friend Chelsea Stallings.
Oh, yeah.
And now she was just someone set her on vibrate mode afterwards. She was like, "Ooh," it
She
was
just floated around the room for the
she
rest of
did. It was awesome.
the night. Because Garth asked about her. Like, he's like,
Right?
"No, what
Yeah.
you're doing? Like, what's going on?" Like, like, oh my god. And then
Yeah.
listen, this is human psychology. There's nothing that we all like. I don't care how modest you are. There's nothing more than our inner soul and our subconscious likes more than the sound of our own voice.
Yeah.
So people are asking us about us and we get to talk. It is going to be a great experience, and that is
Mhm.
what you're selling here, guys, right? So I've talked about this. Send them swag. Like we've done an article on the law of diffusion of technology and marketing, and where we say there's the pioneers, which is 2.5% of the market, and the early adopters, which is 12.5% of the market. Before it gets to the early majority, which is 38%. That's where the hockey stick happens. That's where critical
Mm.
mass happens, and you blow up to be as big as Taylor Swift, right?
Yeah.
And then, and then the late majority is 38, another 38%, and that's where in the broadcast marketing world, that's where the money is made, right? In the
Mhm.
majority, but the people in the late majority do not come into the market until after the people in the early majority who don't come in the market until after the early
Later after
adopters have
early
come
adapt.
in, and they don't come in until after the pioneers. So when you understand this, focusing on the core here makes so much sense because then you are going to through this you are going to build that core audience and you're essentially putting together the pioneers and the early adopters of your brand to get to a version of that early majority to where you can make money. So
Mhm.
he said, he goes on to say, don't do a promotion where if the fan gets another person to blank, that
Mhm.
paradigm is history. It's burned out over decades on the web. If you get a new customer, we'll give you a perk. I see that and I puke. He says, you're making me your sales agent. I love
Mhm.
Clear, but I'm going to sell it to a friend so I get a bonus. What if they
Yeah.
find out? What if they'll feel ripped off? He's like, no, I must feel so good about Clear that I tell people out of the goodness of my heart.
Mhm.
And the goodness of my heart because you want so bad for them to get the benefit that you're getting from whatever that product is,
Yeah.
right? Because if they do it, they're going to love it. They're going to love it, and then they're going to attach that to you. So it's going to make you cooler. So the goodness of my heart is one way of putting it, but also it's like, hey, it's like it feels good helping people, and there's a
Yeah.
dopamine hit from that. And so it's also the goodness of your ego, right? If a fan wants to make more money, they can be an influencer on social media. That's not what we're selling here. What we're selling here is belief. That's the essence of a musical career, which is why those without hits can oftentimes sell more tickets 10 years out than those with hits. Of the hit makers, can if the hit makers can sell tickets whatsoever, without belief, you've got nothing. And he's not saying that press is bad, but he said he wouldn't hunt for it. I wouldn't try to make it happen because it's usually one and done. Like, go out and get a PR agent, especially for artists that are trying to break into a market and do marketing for the first time
Mhm.
on their music. So maybe you're an artist and you got 6 records out, but if you've always just done it organically and you're now deciding to do some marketing, some serious marketing. This is another waste of money in the beginning. Okay, I'm not
Yeah.
saying PR agents are bad, but in the beginning, if you go hunting for it and paying for it, even with the best PR agent in the world, you have to be newsworthy for that PR agent to be able to talk one of their relationships in a magazine that's going to count for you
Yeah.
uh, into giving precious real estate up for you, who's not newsworthy yet, you know?
Right. Well,
So
is it the difference between in another context of what you talked about a lot is the difference between exposure and market penetration. So you go get the PR agent early, and you're going to get some exposure if they're doing their job at all. But that's exposure, and people
Yep.
die of exposure, right? That's like it's doesn't do you a whole lot of good. But what Lefsetz is talking about is you want to focus on market penetration for your pioneers and early
Yeah.
adopters, right? Like you want to really serve them and penetrate that market where they just it's more than just I listened to that Josh Roy, video all the way through one time and I liked it. Well, that was cool, but I'm kind of moving on. No, 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 no. Let's work on penetrating that market and make me famous to you and really have a connection there. So it
Okay.
fits in with that, right? Is that would you say that lines up?
Yeah, like you've just blown me up right now. Like I love how you just put that, and you made me think about something to springboard off that.
Okay.
Absolutely. So here, Lessons is talking about the belief, right?
Hmm.
And it's a lot easier to get people to believe who are already predisposed to liking your stuff because you know that they like it because you've
Hmm.
seen them consume it on on digital ad data breakdowns, and you've seen that they've shared it or you've seen that they've saved it. Okay, and instead of so we talk about market penetration, which is in terms of like a radio market, right, or
Hmm.
your local
More
market.
geographic
It's
based
geographic,
thing.
but
Hmm.
what has to happen to get market penetration is you have to get like mind penetration
Hmm.
on enough people in that market, right? You
Hmm.
have to be able to create enough people to believe in that market to get market penetration. So if we talk about it that way and you focus on your core and you understand reach and frequency and you're going to keep repeating, just putting new, like I am pounding people with new content in the cities that Josh Roy tours in,
Hmm.
right? Because I want them to see him all the time, but with something new. And by the way, if you just heard, even as an artist who has a different appreciation for music than your average fan, because it's so much more personal to you, right?
Hmm.
Even as a songwriter or whatever. But man, are you more likely to believe in an artist after you hear 6 songs from him, let's say 10 different times each? Or are you more likely to begin to believe in an artist when you get to know them better, like by listening to interview content and how they wrote a song and how they did this and how they did that on their journey? What happened when they recorded it and toured stories and stuff like that, where you start to um, get to know who they are. I mean, Bruce Springsteen has this everyman blue collar thing that he's always emitted, and that is why his audience loves him. They relate
Hmm.
to him. And it's not just about the music, it's about what he writes about, right? It's about who
Yeah.
he is that they like. So,
It's
guys, the stuff that
consistent.
you
It's brand consistent. Who he is, what he
yeah,
writes about. It's all because I assume it's all authentic.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
all authentic. And so, when you're, I think I run into sometimes roadblocks with artists. They feel uncomfortable in interviews because they just feel like if maybe they're not famous enough, nobody's going to care. But the story matters. And he goes on to, I'm going to break this down some more here because he really hits the notes on this one. He said usually it's one and done, and people and if and people don't see it and they don't take action. We're back to talking about getting a PR agent and being in a magazine, right,
Mhm.
or being on a TV show. He said like Scott Galloway in the New York Times. Did you see that full page article? It was flattering, especially as a result of its raw existence. But I've yet to talk to anybody who's seen it who doesn't know Galloway already. I'm going to repeat that. I have yet to talk to anybody who's seen the full page article in the New York Times who doesn't know Scott Galloway already. They
Right.
turned right past it if they didn't know who the brand was. It wasn't interesting to them until they knew the brand.
So there are
So
probably a lot
another
of people
reason
that
why,
saw it. Probably a lot of people that saw it, but that didn't register that they saw it because they don't care yet
oh,
about
they
Scott
didn't read
Galloway.
it. They didn't read the article
Right, or they
because
just
they
saw the
didn't care.
headline,
Yeah. But
and
you're right.
so it
It's
bounced
because they
right off.
didn't care yet. So again, PR is something to bring in after you get the train on the tracks because
Mhm.
it's going to be much more bang for the buck. He said the man got a full page in the physical newspaper, but most people read it online where everything but the headline story is equal and oftentimes ignored. So Galloway can feel good about his ink, but it's
Mhm.
not really going to move the needle. right? How many times have you heard me use the same example where I talk about like the cover of Rolling Stone?
Mhm.
Like, you get that? You can feel good about that. That's a bucket list thing for me. You'll be my hero forever.
Hang that sucker on the wall.
Yep, but you're not gonna blow up because of that.
Mhm.
Maybe you get a bump in streams. I'm sure you would, but it'd be for a week or two, and then it'll be gone.
Mhm.
So then he says, and then there's that are playing the attention game. And I feel when he says the attention game, that artists, when confronted with the beginning of trying to market themselves and with the task of trying to create content, feel like they have to play the attention game. And we find that when artists who are just seeking attention, we find that obnoxious. And we don't want to be perceived as that. We don't want to feel that way. And so that's where
Yeah.
the resistance on marketing is, right?
Mhm.
But he said, the tide has turned. His wife Felicia's car got totaled. He says, and she needs to buy a new one. She just has one rule: no Tesla, because of Elon Musk. She doesn't like how much attention Elon Musk is.
Ellen? Is that his wife?
Elon Musk. And then he said, and Kanye's become a joke because if you're always in the news cycle today, you're an object of derision. What's wrong with you that you need this much attention?
Mhm.
And even worse, when we see you ripping off your fans, making them buy multiple physical albums with different covers. Why? Sure, the hardcore will do this. BTS fans will buy anything the band puts out, but the optics are terrible, even if it buys you a number one chart position for a week. And everybody in the business knows it's just about streams, and they can see how your music truly performs. Stars always debut strongly, but how long does that last? Does a track stick out, stay in the Spotify top 50 or the top 10? But you'll get all the publicity for a Billboard number one. But what exactly does it buy you? Network TV attention for a slot your audience will never see? And as far as incentivizing the looky loos, the casual fans to take action, at this point, people don't even bother to stream a track. They're overloaded with input. They've done this too many times. They've streamed bad tracks they're not interested in by Billboard number ones. As far as buying a ticket, have you checked the prices of tickets recently? Never mind
No.
the parking and the alcohol, and nobody's going to a show on a whim. And if you're interested in a show, there's a plethora, one that matches your interests. Why go to the show of the unknown?
Hmm.
Wow, let that sink in.
Yeah.
So you need buzz, and the buzz is created by your core. If you're going to blow up and sustain it, it will be because the core spread the word. And if you're truly great, it will spread like wildfire because active fans are searching for greatness 24/7. They're hungry for it, looking out for it. But there's very, very little that is great. Let me make it clear. If you play somebody your track and they don't immediately ask you to play it again, it's not good enough, period.
There
Harsh
you go.
truth, but there you have it. Good is not good enough. How many times have we said that on this podcast?
Oh, man. Yeah, a lot.
But let's say you're not that great. That's fine. Your fans will keep you alive. They'll give you all their money. A quirk of life is people are drawn to and bond most with that which is not very successful at first.
Mhm.
They can own the act personally when it's that small.
Mhm.
Getting in on the ground floor is like a badge of honor. And as long as you don't push for more attention soon, and as long as you don't ignore the base, your fans will stick by you. Back to that thing I'm doing with Josh, right? With that private Facebook group. Once a week.
Mhm.
Like, I'm gonna let you know how this turns out. I don't know if it's gonna work, but I feel like on paper, this looks like a good way to foster that relationship and to for him to engage in and ignite that core.
Mhm.
He said, think about it. There's plenty of money in having hardcore fans. They go to the show, they buy the merch, and they're the only ones who can spread the word. Better to go out for a cheap ticket price than an overpriced one to pay for production. Because if the ticket is cheap, a fan can drag along a friend. People want to do this. There's such satisfaction in turning someone else onto great music. But if your tickets are expensive, this can't happen. Ignore the headlines. They don't reflect today's reality. First and foremost, a lot of those acts are nowhere near as big as the hype. Once again, the streaming numbers, readily accessible to all, tell the truth.
Mhm.
Because streaming is the distribution. It's not the why, it's the where.
Yeah.
right? So if you've got big streaming numbers, it means you're reaching your audience, okay? And they're listening. Everybody's a journeyman woman today, a journeyman or journeywoman today. If you haven't heard from a friend about an act whose music you're unaware of, an act without a hit, you don't have friends. I'll give you a few examples. Do you know how many times people email me about Larkin Poe? Even better, the Avett brothers. Neither are household names, but they have very strong, relatively large fan bases. Their careers have not been built on the penumbra, right? The shadows, the outside peripheral. It's not been built on the hype. It's been built on the essence, the music and the live performance. That's today's music business. Don't compromise your music. Don't make it like everybody else's, because even if the track is catchy, you won't make any fans and you'll be starting almost at zero the next time around. You want something with edges, something that will hook people. Essentially something that's as close to your truth, you guys, as
Mhm.
possible, right? Like one of the things I'm most proud of with Josh and with Mackenzie O'Brien is that we had one outside track with Josh. He's got this
Mhm.
great that he thinks going to take, but all the other songs like are heavily co-written by him.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
and now Brent, you kind of came in on the second round of writing where he's a little bit more on his game.
Yeah.
He's a little bit more of a presence in the writing room, I think, maybe than before. Which is just a natural reaction people have when you're around hit songwriters. You're like, oh my god, I can't
Yeah,
believe I'm
you grow.
here. You don't want to sound like an idiot. And then you start to work that. And Mackenzie, like, she had a truth. She wanted to tell the truth. We talked about what that truth was, and we chose songs that were built around that truth. Very
Mm.
empowering. She came from her whole life. She felt she was in the back seat like a doormat in all of her relationships, and she just woke up one day and said, "I don't want to do that anymore," and that's what I want to write about. I said, "Okay, well, let's get you with the people that can do that." So,
Mhm.
and Brent, you came through on that, but that's like, is has she boiled it down to the essence of her truth yet? Probably not. I think,
Mhm.
but this is the closest thing she has to her truth right now, and the next one she does will even be better. You
Yeah.
know, so that's what makes the edges. That's what makes it real. That's what makes it different. That's what
Yeah.
makes you stand out is you, right?
Exactly.
So this is the opposite, he says, of the MTV era where the goal was world domination. Hell, there's a good chance you'll be successful and still be considered underground. Most people won't know either you or your music. He said, but I'll tell you a dirty little secret. Most people haven't heard the hits, or maybe the hit and nothing else from the album or by the act. It's a false construct. The old dominating act known by everybody. It's a false construct. Hell, there are acts people hate because they've seen their name too much, irrelevant of the music, which they might not have ever heard. They
Mhm.
just keep seeing them, so they can't stand them, right?
Right.
And in a world of seemingly unlimited choice, we are not corralled into listening to the same stuff. There's no center whatsoever. There are just a zillion acts, some successful, and most of them are not. And to be successful, you must have a fan base. Do not try to jump the line or short circuit the process, appealing to the muckety mucks to have a hit single. Start at the bottom. Get regular people to like your music. And if they don't like it, start over. You're not
Mhm.
entitled to a life as a successful musician. No one
What?
is stopping you from making music. But if you want to be supported in your endeavor, people must not only like it, but want to be closer to it and get more of it. Think small.
I think that's interesting. One thing it makes me think of is we've probably talked about the long tail before or the
Hmm.
bell curve. So you have the bell curve. You start off with very low numbers. People don't know who you are, whatever. If you're fortunate, that it gets thick in the middle where you have much more name recognition, hopefully hits, all that stuff. Then it starts trailing off toward the end of your career. Then you have this long tail that kind of skirts low. But that's important, and it almost feels like what you're working on at the beginning are those same people that are going to be that long tail. Those are going to be the people that really believe in you and will stick around when you come around for your 20th anniversary tour where no one else knows your name. They get your name wrong on the marquee, but your people are going to show up. And that's
Yeah,
probably a lot of the people from the beginning. And
yeah.
you'll be really glad to see those people. That's
Yeah,
kind
I
of what
mean,
it makes me think
taking
of.
this back to Seth Godin, right, who we've
Mm,
quoted so many times on the podcast as a marketing guru. He says that marketing is summed up in 7 eloquent words. People like us buy products like that. People
mhm,
identify with products, and so he goes, in terms of the music industry, it would be people like us love artists like that,
yeah.
right?
And I ain't
And
gonna lie, by the way, I've used that quote and adapted it into a song, and I got a cut.
did
I
you
can't
really?
wait for y'all to hear it. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it. You son of a gun, I need to
It
hear
slaps. It's good.
that. But he talks about it's like the first 300 or 400,000 Nirvana records were bought by people who are the hardcore fans who love Nirvana. And
Mhm,
then the other 9.6 million were bought by people who want to identify with people who love Nirvana, you know?
mhm,
So I think, uh, and well, let's go back to the Seth Godin trough one more time. This is what Seth is telling people in the corporate world, right? It's the 80-20 rule, right?
mhm,
And when you're broadcasting, let's say you're Procter and Gamble and you're doing broadcast ads for Tide, okay? So you're spraying and praying with a
mhm.
big huge brand, and 20% of your customers generate 80% of your revenue.
Yeah,
And 80% of your customers generate 20% of your revenue. It's called Pareto's Law. It's
yeah.
a very, very real thing. It applies in so many different parts of life. But
Mhm,
the point being, what he's saying is everybody, like in the big corporate broadcast world at the top with those big brand names, they're worried about losing market share on an audience, right? So they don't want to stop advertising because that would shrink the 80%.
mhm.
That looks really bad. Like if you lose customer base by 80%, you're only losing 20% of your revenue.
Right.
And so what Seth Godin is saying is like,
However, you're spending 80% of your marketing costs to reach 20% of the people or something, like
so expensive when you're
yeah.
trying to do it in a broadcast way with a PR agent for artists, with a radio promotion team for artists. Like it's expensive and it's not that effective. And so what he suggests is it's permission marketing, right? He's like, I would want to know, like the hardcore Tide fans, if
Mhm,
Tide knew, like if Procter and Gamble knew who those people were and what they liked, and they had, if he just blew off the 80% of the customers that generate only 20% of the revenue and focused on the 20% of the customers that generate 80% of the revenue, and really servicing them and
mhm,
communicating with them through email, and building up a hardcore relationship and a love of the brand, they're going to be able to sell more stuff that way than through the spray and pray method,
mhm.
because you're creating a relationship as opposed to this ethereal brand that you just see on TV that's made in some cabal
Hmm.
looking down on us all. You know what I mean? It's just like,
Right.
uh, so anyway, so guys, that's it. Focus on the core. Think small. How can you take who you have right now in the core, and how can you uh, constantly engage them and constantly ignite that core and spend time with them? When you do that through different video content, I think if you do it live once a week, you're going to be good. But this is how we're creating relationships in the corporate world, and it's how you need to be creating relationships with your business as an entrepreneur.
Mhm,
So I encourage everybody to really focus on the small, because the small, that core, when you turn those people into hardcore fans, and then you start to implement sound marketing strategies to try to grow that core, that's a lot different than trying to hit everywhere at once, which is the way
mhm.
it's always been done.
Yeah.
So I just thought that article spoke volumes, man.
Cool.
Well, once again, as we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, Taylor Swift proves that whoever owns the traffic rules the road.
Yes.
Okay. And I want you guys to understand what this means. In a lot of ways, this today's episode, Bob Lefsetz, is sort of unpacking the way we used to think, the way we think about broadcast marketing, because it was effective back in the day when you had an active radio listener, but those don't exist now. Not enough of them to turn your world around. So you have to think about how to create those relationships differently. And you have to understand the difference between a broadcast platform and a digital platform. And guess what? I got a really stout PDF for you. It's absolutely free. You'll go to giftfromjohnny.com. It's called Whoever Owns the Traffic Rules the Road. And it just will get your head right. The more you understand how to honor the digital platform, the more you're going to ask the right questions. And when you ask the right questions, I promise you, your subconscious is going to deliver the right answers and you're going to see the needle move. So giftfromjohnny.com, Johnny, and just tell us where to send it. This podcast exists because we want you to win. So keep on climbing.
And we'll see you at the top.